Wait a minute. Good morning, everyone. I think that pretty much sums up the news for today. Thank you for all the fish. So we are, one way or the other, vicariously in World War III. A war of the world by any other name. There's that, and there's something I just couldn't pass over today. Pansexuality, which I, by the way, had to look up. That was new. And Miley Cyrus, of course, who is very serious about this, she announced last week that she is pansexual. In her words, I am literally open to every single thing that is consenting and doesn't involve an animal, and everyone is of age, she told Paper Magazine. Everything that's legal, I'm down with. I'm down with any adult. Anyone over the age of 18 who is down to love me. I don't relate to being a boy or a girl, and I don't have to have my partner relate to being a boy or a girl, or being a boy or a girl. So pansexuality, or omnisexuality, because apparently that's a thing now. I don't know what the heck I've been doing. Anyway, sexual attraction, romantic love, emotional attraction towards people of any sex or gender identity. Pansexual people may refer to themselves as gender blind, because I guess slut is too much. Okay, so asserting that gender and sex are insignificant or irrelevant in determining whether or not they will be sexual with others. So let's go over a little Pan 101. Greek religion and mythology. Pan is the god of the wild, shepherds, flocks, nature, wild mountains, rustic music, companionship of the nymphs. Pan has the hindquarters, legs, and horns of a goat, in the same manner as a faun or a satyr. It usually has horse hinds, but it's part man, part beast. Pan is famous for his sexual powers, rape, pillage, love of children, and often depicted with a large phallus. Diogenes of Sinope, speaking in jest, related a myth of Pan learning masturbation from his father, Hermes, and teaching the habit to shepherds. Pan's greatest conquest was that of a moon goddess called Selene. He accomplished this by wrapping himself up in sheepskin to hide his hairy black goat form. No, goat form now, that's what he was hiding. And drew her down from the sky into the forest, where he then seduced her. So an attraction to sex of any kind. Pan being associated with the word panic. When he was heard, he induced panic and fear. Now this woman, who was most likely raped multiple times at Bohemian Grove, who's saying, I like anything but children and animals. Although, to be honest, I've seen pictures of Miley naked holding different animals. She'd be naked. The animals, of course, would be naked. But she's creepy. Is she not? And, of course, I could put up pictures of her naked holding a pig this one that she liked the most, I guess. And this is supposed to show us that she is kind to animals. Penn was a freak. Then we have more of the Donald J. Trump, so of course resonating with the American Jesus. Donald Trump now is going by Donald J. Trump, utilizing the entire gematria of 888, the number of Jesus. And notice that Trump's 888 came to us during the Lion's Gate, 888 alignment, the death of Cecil, the lion in Africa. His prominence also rose during the ongoing test run of Jade, artificial intelligence that is now recording everything you do and you say and you Google or you look at. This is the man who says that he will save America and make her great once again, which is hilarious because I don't see the greatness. I see the greatness before it was America. I see the greatness before the ship sailed. And I'm not saying that this was not... We were already populated by people all over the world who, surprisingly enough, like to travel. But I couldn't go on without looking at the other prophecy that's happening right now. Kalki. Vishnu has many forms. Obviously, there would be a mainstream political arm of the movement. Kalki, another name for the Lord of the world, returning. And as we've traveled all over the world with this same myth, the same story, because this is about the great forgetting. There's so much I want to tell you today. I'm trying, okay, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take a deep breath. Breathe with me. So, the next avatar of God at the end of the Kali Yuga. I need to give you an excerpt from the Vedic prophecies, whose facts will help to clarify who and what cannot be an avatar of Lord Kalki. So as this 10,000 years period of the Golden Age, well, as it did come to a close, we're not in that, by the way. The lower modes of material nature will become so strong that people will lose interest in all spiritual topics. They will be replaced. Everything will become godless. Devotees, the bhaktas, the sages that are left on the planet, by this time will be so unique in character and peculiar compared to the rest of society that they will be ridiculed, hunted down in the cities for sport like animals. Thus they will flee to the cities to live underground in caves or high up in mountains. Or powerful Kali, who is envious of saintly persons, who destroys the practice of religious principles. In this way, genuine, saintly, or spiritually advanced people will start to just disappear from the face of this earth. And those marked by the scent of flesh will rule. That is the time when the new dark influence of the age of Kali will become so dominant, unleashing all its influence, all of the prophecies. Then will be manifest without hindrance the ones who come to take. Things will become so bad as the years go by that this world will be like one of the hellish planets in which people are born only to suffer. There will be corruption in all governments and all police, their words, not mine. They will be no better, worse in fact, than all common criminals. Common citizens will no longer have protection. They will be subjugated to the worst crimes with no solution. Everyone will be fighting with each other. The world will slide into a state of constant war, constant chaos. Finally, after 432,000 years from the beginning of the age of Kali, Lord Kalki will appear as the 22nd Avatara of God. Again, this is the return of the King of the world. And there are many avatars or incarnations of the Supreme Being. Or in this case, could be the Supreme Beings. Those of us who decide to step out of this consumer world. As stated in one of the texts, O Brahmanas, so he's not talking to just one being. The incarnations of the Lord are you can't count them, like rivets flowing from an inexhaustible source of water. However, out of all of the various incarnations, one specifically states, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it in their language, but it means that the Lord Sri Krishna is the original Supreme Personality. All others are his planetary portions, interesting word, parts of his planetary portions, who descend into this material world to carry out certain responsibilities, do specific things. This is especially the case when the planets are overly disrupted. In the Kali Yuga, many years go in, constant disturbances, social upheavals. These are allowed to happen, but in the Vedic literature, it predicts at the end of the Yuga, Lord Kalki will make his appearance to change everything. It's an interesting prophecy, because it says at this point there will exist no topics on the subject of God. There will be topics on the subject of personality and deity, but not the Godhead. Even the residents of so-called saints, respectable people, when the power of the government will be transferred into hands of ministers elected from lowborns. Now, lowborns in this case isn't really caste, although now it's translated to caste. But we have to remember, in the times that these were written, caste had more to do with what people chose to do at that time. That there would be practices taught, institutes of laws would be actually over, and then something else would come. And then there would be new people who would manifest the 8 arms of nature, nature herself. That these conditions would happen worldwide. It would have nothing to do with color, shade, caste, but that people would emerge from the chaos of earth. And there would be undescribable activities of thieves and plunderers and rapists. Now, it's a fairly long prophecy, and if you guys are interested, one day I can do just that, because we will be getting into the Vedic text. For sure, we'll be getting into it. I've spoke to you before about what is here. It is not coming. It's the event. The event. It's natural. It concerns something affecting the sun and the other suns. It's not about slamming into the earth. There will not be an asteroid. Even though I do think we are surrounded by a friggin' nasty army, but we can't see it because of the thorium, high altitude spraying, so we get this gray shiny. So if you're coughing or tasting metal in your mouth, that's why. One of the things this does in the high altitude spraying is elevate the iron in your blood. Elevated iron in your blood causes violence. People are reacting to these things, and of course they're not imaginary. This is the convergence. This isn't coming, it's here. Did NASA know? Absolutely. And everyone thinks that NASA has all the answers and that they know absolutely everything, but for some reason or another has decided to keep quiet on this. I don't think that's the case. I believe there's a lot out there that NASA and the other space agencies like JAXA and ESA are absolutely friggin' clueless about. After all, this universe, this multiverse, which they're just saying, geez, I guess we have one of those, is absolutely immense. Infinite. It is these space agencies, though. They keep quiet because they don't know everything, and therefore they refuse to disclose certain subjects, discoveries, events, until they have a firmer grasp on the situation or discovery, but they cannot put their little slippery, nasty hands on that. They are in a quandary, and have been for quite some time. And if an event comes along that has never been explored by modern science, what of the many new discoveries that were thought to be impossible and yet are manifesting right in our own solar system quickly? What if these events are hard to see with present equipment, present satellites, because we've got the zombie apocalypse going up out there and they're crashing into each other? But a vast problem arises because nothing here is set in stone. This event is causing completely unknown processes in our entire solar system. The solutions to these processes are completely out of reach. NASA, never a straight answer, has no freaking idea. Nothing here has any idea, and even the time frame as exactly when the processes will stop, when they will wrap up, you can't find that. It won't be this September, because I told you about this around 2009. So I ask you, imagine for a moment a predicament. Objects can be freaking invisible out there. Energies can be invisible out there. Energies are invisible out here, and because of that freaking weird looking sky where I can't even see the blue, I couldn't even see the moon. I still can't see the sun. I don't even know if we have a sun. I'm just hoping we do. But this includes massive moving celestial systems, even the unforeseen sort. So when satellites and telescopes and energy detecting equipment shoots incomplete data back to Earth, supplied by scientists, there are huge invisible areas of the subject being studied, I guess. Are they seeing it all? They admit to seeing about 1% of what's there. And there's really no way to tell. They cannot figure out the mass or the composition of this incoming celestial system. They cannot tell the extent of it. Worst of all, they cannot tell the extent of the influence it is having on our sun, on our solar system, on our bodies, on all the bodies of everything living here. So at this point, you might be wondering, what the heck am I talking about? Is it the X-wave? Well, this is exactly the problem we're facing right now. This isn't just a physical event of the craziness. Something is here. It has entered our solar system, and the majority of its system is something that modern science has no idea and had no thought that it could exist. This is a stream of discoveries that are hinting at a celestial anomaly which is currently rewriting the fundamental concepts of how our solar system interacts with interstellar space. And it is much, much too close. There are changes. This is not prophecy. This is not imagination, nor is this science fiction. I research these things. And I'd put together a while, but we'll bring them up to you again. Pure collection of scientific articles. And there is a celestial system that has already moved into our solar system. It's not coming. Daddy's here. And he seems a little pissed off. Now, the full extent of this system cannot be determined because the majority of this string of events lies outside of any scientific knowledge or any data gathering. It is affecting every planet, every moon of our system. It has been, as a matter of fact, for almost 2 decades now. 2. It is of a body, increased, dense energy, kept together by magnetics, plasma, and much, much more. The most pressing concern is the effect it is having on our sun. And since solar cycle 24, to put it mildly, it has the capability of causing such a sustained electromagnetic pulse across the entire Earth, months, decades, centuries, millennia. This was first discovered, this anomaly. It was released by NASA in an article called The Giant Ribbon, discovered at the edge of the solar system, October 15th, 2009. It is a ribbon of magnetics, plasmatics, for lack of a better term, because they're still saying, yeah, it's really big and it's out there. So, thanks guys. That clears that crap right up. But as I've told you before, scientists, what they've said about this ribbon is they had no idea this ribbon existed or what created it. And all of our previous ideas about the heliosphere need to be changed. Giant ribbon. So, a couple months after that, so December 2009, in the December 24th article of Nature magazine, it still exists, you can look this up, NASA released an article entitled Voyager makes an interstellar discovery, which claims in the very first sentence that the solar system is passing through an interstellar cloud that physics say should not exist. This discovery, the information, which was released in the December 2009 article, by the way, was not a new discovery. So I dig, and I dig, and I dig. And I found a scientific paper that was written 30 years before that. Well, 31 years. So, in 1978, a little-known scientific research paper was done. Its findings were presented to NASA. Its importance hidden away in the archives, never to be seen in the light of day because not true. So, this is from a 1978 scientific paper provided by NASA, Astrophysics Data System, entitled, "Is the Solar System Entering a Nearby Interstellar Cloud?" I know, long name, not exciting. But Claudine Lorette, Paul Bouston found this. It had to do with our solar system entering an interstellar cloud, 78, and the repercussions of this event, which would be geophysical, metaphysical, their words. The presence of this cloud, affecting all the physical conditions of the solar system. This is not new. And I've told you that before. And it makes me feel good to say, Nana, told you, and told you about this, and listen to my damn shows. Anyway, the encounter with this cloud will affect the neutrino flux release from the sun. Remember a couple of weeks ago we were talking about the neutrinos that they found in the Arctic? We are being neutrino bathed. But also, they have some dramatic influence on the terrestrial climate. And they will for the next 10,000 years. This is not a drive-by event, brothers and sisters. We're about to get down. We have been getting down with something since 1978, at least. Now, the observations and analysis mentioned suggest the presence of an interstellar cloud and an encounter that will change everything. The complexity of this interstellar medium is not understood. This situation is far more complicated. And it took NASA, in its infinite stupidity, 31 years to finally decide this may be, hey, this is a thing. So, via December 23rd, 2009, they called this cloud the fluff. And that's why every so often I make the, oh good, it's a fluffy bunny thing. They called it fluff. It's the biggest, most magnetic thing we've ever seen. It is joined with our sun. It's practically inside of it. But they call it fluff. Don't worry. It'll be fine. So, when I talk to you about the hurricanes, the incredible changes going on right now, the violence, the fact that Western sanctions on Russia-China cooperation, China, who has just dumped $100 billion of U.S. currency. This is a tectonic shift of the global economy, tectonic shift that has to do with the ribbon that we're We're all up in there now. We're in there. Not coming. No, it's not going to be the end of the world in September. We are actually a little bit apocalypto right now. A little bit. Well, okay. Lots. The end of the world? We are definitely going through something, are we not? China under attack? Because yet another massive explosion at a Chinese chemical factory. Fourth in a month, so you see, I wasn't sure if it was 3 or 4. It looked like a fourth, but it looks like, yeah, it is. And it's a blast at a chemical factory. An explosion at another alleged chemical factory killed only one person yet again. Giant explosion in a chemical lab. Massive explosions rocking Chinese ports. A few days later, another massive explosion at alleged chemical factory. Pictures on Chinese social media showed a large fireball rising up from what appeared to be an industrial area. But I've not heard again, other than the report I gave you was first everyone around there heard an earthquake. Please go back, and you can find this on YouTube, to the Rod of God weaponry. Look outside at that gray sky. Look up atmospheric spraying, high altitude spraying, because they don't want you to see the chemtrails. They realize that, yes, we're slow, but we're not that freaking slow. And remember the new satellites that they have lined the world with, that are all weaponized, that could all do these things. And the baby seals dying with leukemia. Everything on this planet right now is in trouble. Everything biological is in trouble. Things we have no idea what they are in trouble. We are not alone. It's not just one thing, of course. This is a world-changing event. And the powers that be are losing their friggin' minds. They no longer care. And I think that's fairly obvious, that they no longer care. Sanctions? Western sanctions. So let's talk about that for a minute. Because it's way worse. European spineless puppets participating in their own losses, lest they be sanctioned too by the evil empire. In some cases, they are so submissive, like the case in punishing Russia. They advance sanctions against their own economic and political interests, just to please the transatlantic hegemon, which wish it was Pokemon, which is far away from the battleground, and always stays far away from where the action is, so that others will get bombed and hurt. Case in point, World War I, World War II, and World War III. If you think World War II stopped, then officially, well, not officially, but it's on. So it's being played out. And that destroyed Europe. Even though the impulses for the two ferocious world wars came from the U.S. Oh, yes, it did. The current crisis around the Ukraine is also entirely fabricated, instigated by Washington, to the point of provoking another world war, which I am saying that it's not provoking, it's on now, it's on. Maybe willy-nilly, the last one of our civilization, Washington does not miss a beat pointing the finger at the Russian President Putin, and to enter the ever more transparently horrendous power game for the Ukraine, where Obama's men, with the help of European vassals, organized a coup, placing a democracy, a democratically elected president, putting a criminal, a murderous Nazi government in place. Now the idea is against all previous accords, making Ukraine a NATO country, and as a sideline, usurping Ukraine's riches in agricultural land. Ukraine was for hundreds of years considered Europe's breadbasket, especially for the Soviet Union, later Russia. Ukraine has its own natural resources, notably minerals, natural gas, and with an estimated 1.2 trillion cubic meters, Ukraine has Europe's third largest shale gas reserves. Shale is accessed by highly controversial, socio-economically unfriendly extraction process called fracking. The U.S. economy, which depends largely on war, and the war industry needs constant new wars, conflicts. More than 50% of the GDP depends on the military, related industries, and services. United States survives by death alone. Obama brags about being currently involved in 7 wars around the world. Notwithstanding the almost countless conflicts around the globe, instigated, funded, carried out by proxies on behalf of this evil empire, Mr. Putin hasn't fallen into this trap. In fact, thanks to Putin's stellar strategic thinking, democracy, believe it or not, the world, so far, we have World War III light. The would-be Third War. It's not as bad as it could be, believe it or not. Now, the U.S. economy, which depends on this death, needs constant new wars, needs constant new conflict. To make sure the world at large believes that Russia is the bad guy, and that it is the culprit of the atrocious, deadly Ukraine conflict, sanctions have to be levied. Mr. Putin has to be slandered, insulted, vilified. The naked emperor's word still has an impact. In the Western neoliberal hemisphere, where politicians, believe it or not, do as if the same way as people admire the new clothes of the naked emperor, sanctions should punish the Russian people, evoke an internal rebellion, and lead to regime change. The contrary has happened. Mr. Putin enjoys 85%, the highest approval rating of any democratically elected head of state on this planet right now. Second question: why can any one nation impose sanctions? Because the U.S. had, after World War II, when they called for the Bretton Woods Conference to establish the World Bank, well, yes, United States, and the International Money Fund, already one fixed idea: to dominate the world through the weapons of finance. What wasn't obvious then has become crystal friggin' clear. the self-declared victor of World War II, dictated the rules of this new evil empire. The evil empire, which was foretold by Columbus on his way over here to start some crap. Now, I'm not saying we didn't like the people coming over. Believe it or not, this place called Canada and the United States and South America had people living here from all over the world in peace for a very, 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 very long time. But after the rape of Europe, and we've gone into it, Europe, they raped the crap out of Europe, beat you, enslaved you, put you on the ships to go and meet the natives everywhere. And we recognized you. We knew you, except we didn't know what they had done to you in the some 300 years of silence. Here they say 300 years, that you didn't come over. We didn't know where you were. We sent ships. They were all destroyed, other than the one that went from Iqaluit, way up north, with the Inuit or the Eskimo, that landed in Ireland. You can look this up. It's a thing. To find out what happened, what was going on. Brothers and sisters, we knew you. But this new thing was always what they wanted for America. The place that they called America, which is still ISIS, which is still Cecil, or Celine, or, many different names, like that Cyrus girl. Pansexual friggin' goddess standing in the middle of your friggin'... Anywho, moving on. With the U.S. holding the largest gold reserves, World War II, the ingenious idea was to establish a gold standard that would peg the U.S. dollar against a gold price, U.S. $35 an ounce, and all other Western currencies were pegged to the dollar. The IMF was created to watch the Western gold-based money system. Nixon abandoned that standard. 1971, because too many dollars were in circulation for the U.S. to keep up with any gold reserve. And number two, U.S. debt left by the Vietnam War was to be covered by the sale of gold at market price, which was already about 10 times higher than the fixed rate at $35. Yes, at that time, even a Nixon administration had some ethics, namely paying a debt. But the real and hidden reason was actually brilliant in that, wicked, evil, grin, mastermind, bad guy kind of way. By leaving the gold standard, the dollar became the de facto world's fiat currency of reference, the main reserve money, basically replacing all the gold. Large international contracts were established in dollars, therefore increasing their demand for dollars. In addition, through a special debt negotiation, and this was negotiated back then by the Bush family and the friends of the Saudi king and the House of Saud, later formalized by Kissinger, the never-dying man, with the Saudi government and Saudi Arabia, which is why there's a lot of wars in the Middle East. That's your boy down there. So the head of OPEC was to assure that the dollar would remain the only currency in which all hydrocarbons could be traded. In return, the U.S. would assure militarily, the Saudis' security. Since everybody needed oil, everybody needed dollars, the demand for more dollars in circulation. In comes the bis, which is a very bad word, by the way. Bis is dis, it's an ancient god, he's disfigured. He's everything, he's bad, he's dis, he's against. He dissed you. It's a cuss, it's a really bad one. Even I will not say what it means. But bis and dis is the same. So it's the Bank for International Settlements. Created in 1930, originally set up to facilitate Germany's payments that were imposed by the Treaty of Versailles. Today, BIS, largely privately owned by the Shell Corporation of Rothschild Group and other Western banking families, is considered the central bank of central banks, controlled almost all international money transactions, most of which have to transit through the United States-based Wall Street Bank. Hence was created fraudulent fiat money system, thanks to which Washington plays up its, to this day, cowboy with the rest of the world. This has just changed. The short of the long story explains why the U.S. has had so much financial power in the rest of the world, including Russia, why Washington may seize and block foreign assets around the world at will, why it can coerce and sanction other countries into behaving according to the U.S. agenda. This supremacy has just dropped to its little knees. Sanctions will become more threats than actual actions. BRICS, Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa, as well as SOCO, Shanghai Corporation Organization countries, are carrying out a general trade in their own currencies now. Russia and China are already trading hydrocarbons in their own currencies. Others will soon follow, and the cost of sanctions to Russia is so controversial right now. According to CNN, the sanctions cost Russia more than US $100 billion. At the same time, Newsweek admits Russia could easily replace trade with EU by increasing trade with Asia and Latin America, thereby rapidly reducing the cost of sanctions. Newsweek says that the cost of U.S. dictated sanctions to Europe to impose on Russia cost the EU at least another £100 billion, so double that number. Indian NDTV reports losses to Europe £21 billion. At the same time, they report 2013 EU exports to Russia as $119 billion. Sanctions actually started 2014. Not coming, already done. So, true story on the ground is increasing misery, especially for Europe's southern countries, Spain, Greece, Italy, the common people suffering mainly from losses of agricultural exports, declining tourism, but also job losses throughout the EU. For example, in Germany alone, loss and threatened jobs due to sanctions on Russia, so reduced trade, are estimated at more than 300,000. A chain of consequences is endless here, but mostly hurting Europe, especially not the transatlantic big master and the hegemon. Putin actually said that these sanctions are God-sent. It allows Russia to develop agriculture and industry to eventually become completely self-sufficient, meaning independent from all Western trade. Now the question here of oil prices and oil manipulations is controversial. Oil prices have dropped by 50% in the last 12 months. And you probably think, but what about the aliens, Trace? Okay, we'll go back to the aliens, because I hate them so much you wouldn't even believe. Okay, taking a break. Everyone stretch your legs. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Turtle Island News live with Tracey Kennedy. Now, I don't want to get into just the economics because it's boring, it's money, it's stupid. Long story short, China and Russia now hold the world in their hands. They do. The fate of the world in their hands. President Putin will visit China tomorrow. So the 2nd, 3rd? Is it the 1st? Yeah. Tomorrow. Take part in events dedicated to the 70th anniversaries of Japan's surrender in World War II to discuss cooperation. It's a big deal. It's a big deal now when we have Syria, absolutely a humanitarian crisis. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, preparing for another US-backed ground offensive in Yemen. Jewish High Court demanding the Pope Francis apologize for recognizing Palestinian state. So there's some stuff. The 2016 U.S. election will be about scapegoating immigrants. But let me tell you, as I've said before, this world is about to see a change that it has not experienced before. We thought the fleeing Europe was a bad thing. Nah, we've not seen nothing like this. The destabilization of Africa and the Middle East has already prompted millions to flee, mass migrations, and deaths because of foreign policy. Britain has now become one of the most violent nations on this planet. Extraordinary brutality inflicted on civilians in Yemen. War games right at Russia's doorstep. NATO has kicked off naval drills in the Black Sea with Ukraine. America is protecting ISIS. The Pentagon is not targeting Islamic State training camps. The attack on the nuclear deal, the Israel factor, the Iran peace scare, because peace is now scary, and something just happened. China. China's gold stocks, dumping of U.S. treasuries. Now, 3 weeks ago, well, I can't be sure what actually happened. I can at least speculate here, because we have many dots and lots of data points here to help us. But first, it needs to be pointed out, even if I'm wrong and have come to a completely wrong conclusion, just the knowledge alone that something has really changed is enough. If you know something has changed, you can take clues, look at various markets for inflection points, and currently most markets are stretched to various limits, whether it be zero-bound credit markets, equities, real estate, commodities, gold, silver, all values had reached extreme highs or lows, and something changed 3 weeks ago, and a series of events began. And it all started with China announcing a 600 additional tons of gold. This was followed by the IMF rebuff of China, the 3 yen devaluations, 4 accidental explosions. Then equity markets all over the world, which were already shaky, began violently to unravel, finally spilled all across the world. This tested the PPT's limits, which were apparently 23 billion last week. There are other behind the scenes dots I'm sure I've missed, but I'd like to add, since I'm just speculating. In the gold area, the GLD inventory supposedly rose over the last 2 weeks, even though gold was weak and being sold. This is against a backdrop of very deep backwarding, going towards a full 6 months in London. The current, how about backwardian? Is that a word? I'm using it. To further out in time and far larger in price than ever before. And these data points are in exact divergence to a dropping gold price. Why would there be buying in GLD if gold was being panic sold? And also, if real gold was being dumped, how could it be backwardation or a shortage? Wouldn't sales make profit extremely plentiful? There's been some anomalies. Friday, there was 63 August contracts still open, even though the contract went off the board. This hasn't happened in 40 years. How is this possible? We're seeing some friggin' stuff going on. It is going on right now. Bloodshed, violence. So, we could go into the whys and the wherefores, and we have talked about these things and how we got here. Yeah, apparently all that sticking the little finger out to have a cup of tea is really just drove them nuts. But if we go back in history, whenever Britain goes and invades someone, they are incredibly bloodthirsty, dripping nastiness. But let's go back. Let's go way back. With every show and every individual I'm trying to reach, I want to begin by making all of you see cultural self-awareness. The one that we inherit from our parents and pass on to our children is squarely and solidly built on something called the Great Forgetting that occurred in every culture worldwide during formative millennia of our civilization. What in the heck happened? What happened? Seriously. You know? Because I don't believe we are these a-holes. I don't believe we're this sick, that we're this twisted. I don't believe that we are the same things that left the garden. I don't. As a matter of fact, and you know I'm not a big fan of that particular story. We became consumers at one point or another. That everything had to be eaten. That we no longer lived like we did. This great forgetting is all about wealth of knowledge that our culture lost when we adopted to a new civilized lifestyle. That is not the way of our people. Our people, big hug, making a little round thing with my fingers, our people. The knowledge that allowed cultures to survive worldwide for millennia in peace, or we wouldn't have so many DNA traces all over the world of all kinds of people. Now the knowledge that we had once, tribal, we had an understanding that we were but one culture. All of this disappeared, seemingly in a very few short generations. The great forgetting accounts for the enormous cultural collapse, as once tribal people found themselves in something new and strange, a centralized society which had to be forced on us. Why would we do this? We always moved with the seasons. We always moved with the herds. A tribal people cannot live under these rules. So this must change worldwide, and we didn't do this. So this is new beliefs, new ways of life, rushing into a cultural vacuum to fill this void without being tested by natural selection over thousands and millions of years. This new thing is evolutionarily unstable. It is only recent that this great forgetting has even been exposed. Understanding it holds the key to making sense of our newly destructive culture that may be on the verge of raping itself into non-existence. But remembering what it is that was forgotten is the only way, is the only key to get us past this thing. So, here's as close as we can find. Something changed 10,000 years ago. One culture in the Near East adopted a way of life that humans had not done before. One culture. They practiced a form of agriculture which enabled them to live settled. You would think this was a good place, a good thing, but it had never been done, not anywhere. How could something like that lead to a collapse, and why 10,000 years ago? It began to practice intensive forms of agriculture. They developed food supplies. It led to population, geographic explosion that began farming communities that turned into villages and towns and kingdoms and civilization. Civilization is not civilized. But it was a long time before people began to write things down. Not like this. To kill a tree. To destroy one of our beautiful ancient ones, the mountains. To write down history. And it was actually several thousand years after that fact. Actually, it may only be 600 years ago. But, we'll leave the dates. We know this happened. At one point this happened, and it changed everything. But what happened between the people of this culture was a forgetting. They forgot that they were hunter-gatherers, foragers, who lived a nomadic lifestyle. And this is way after we started eating. I don't know why we changed. And I know it's just a theory. But reading the old stories, again, it looks like that was not necessary at first. Later we began to taste, and we learned the ways of pleasure. Pleasure became something new. Pleasure can easily turn into greed, wanting, coveting, needing. So what we may have started off by sharing, and who knows who made that first step. I blame aliens, of course, but that's just me. Forever, and still to this day, we have what we call primitive cultures that always live in the fringe areas of civilization. This always suggests that humans have always lived another way. You know, our history books try to explain that away. But what changes us from a natural state of civilization to the fall, the degrade, savagery? Because we had once lived as fully fledged humans. How could we forget? How are we now so inferior? How are we now so subhuman? And this collective memory lapse, this belief that humans had arrived in the world as civilized builders, has held the foundations of thinkers in many cultures, philosophers, historians, the other guys. Sumer, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, India, China, wove the great forgetting into their very work. Other philosophers and historians, and those that followed, Hebrew, biblical, Moses, Samuel, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Jeremiah, the great Western thinkers, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, the great Eastern thinkers, Lao Tzu, who is all about the blood and manipulation, Buddha, Confucius, but all of this work sounds pretty good, wove the great forgetting into their work. Thinkers of more modern times follow suit too. And they don't take any great forgetting into account. Why would they? They had no reason to believe that humans had not come into this world as civilized builders. They had no reason to believe that this was not our natural state. Thomas Aquinas, Francis Bacon, Galileo Galilei, Isaac Newton, Rene Descartes carried out culture with its great forgetting. But the truth is being revealed. Some of the digs being done now are exposing the great forgetting. Paleontology is making it clear that mankind did not arrive on planet Earth when civilization emerged, that we have lived for a very, very long time, millions of years in fact, in a completely different way, that mankind hadn't fallen from a natural state into a primitive state, that this is how we began. Looking back on it, one would assume that the great exposure to the great forgetting would have been momentous discovery. It should have shook the very foundations of a way of thinking, very foundations of the cultures of this earth. One would have assumed that this would have led to some fundamental changes on who we are and how we should live and who we think, or who we've been told we are now. But it didn't. The great forgetting was just explained away. Instead of admitting that two very different, very legitimate ways of living had been adopted by mankind in its history of thinkers. And the thinkers of the 19th century came up with this. Man had been born into this world a civilized, a primitive savage, but he was destined to become a civilized builder. In essence, they said, who cares that we didn't arrive as civilized builders? It was our destiny to become a civilized builder. Now that we are here, who cares what happened before? Those people that lived before us were just a precursor to us. They weren't important. They did nothing. Anything that lives different is bad. Historians came up with convenient ways to disregard those humans that walked the earth those millions of years before these friggin' cultures emerged. Probably has to do with the letter J, which is around, well, I did have a, not argument so much, disagreement. Roman I became a J. You can't get much more than this. It's 400 or 500 years ago. And that little hook, ladies and gentlemen, is what I think. Who rewrote all this stuff. Excuse me. So instead of accepting that we were part of a history, that the historians put in this weird broad term called prehistory that didn't matter, they were before history, because history began when civilization began. We are the good stuff. We are the ones who are fulfilling the destiny of mankind. We are the ones who should be studied. It is the now. And if we put an extra 1 to make something 1,000 instead of 100, poetic license. Our culture's transition from hunter, gatherer, to builder, just explained away. The term our thinkers coined was agricultural revolution. This is how it's explained, that before agriculture, humans didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to practice agriculture. We sat there crying, lonely, sucking our thumbs, rocking back and forth. Hunter-gatherers, uncivilized, uneducated, and I guess all of the braided trees all through North America had to be done by the Sasquatch because Indians couldn't have done it, to say that way's home, so that the trees always grow pointing in that direction. No, it's better to say, well, it's probably Sasquatch. Can't say that people did this and people knew how to grow in a different way and knew how to move in a different way rather than raping the land and growing one vegetable, one friggin' fruit. But no, we didn't. We were rocking back and forth. We were crying. We were sad. We were confused. We were lonely. We were naked. If we just had a pair of blue jeans on, see how much better it is? So anyway, we discovered farming recently after we took our thumbs out of our mouth and said, hey. And then we settled down and we built this new thing, this civilization. and the agricultural revolution, foundation of which greatness, the greatness of this now humanity stems. So it's explained in such a way that leads us to believe agriculture was something that just happened. Something that happened more or less at the same time to everybody. The story is told so that we think one group of people figured it out, and those nearby saw what they were doing and thought, aha, what a better way of doing things. What a better way of living. And once a group was enlightened with the knowledge of agriculture, they immediately stopped primitive things like hunting and gathering and moving and settled down. They could see this was man's destiny. They eagerly embraced this thing. Please don't fall into this trap, thinking that this is some ultimate truth and then stop looking. Honestly, I'm sure you won't. But I just need to point it out so that you know my innermost intentions here for creating works and pieces like this that I bring to you. Play with it a little. This is all yours to work with, to the best of your ability. Surprise the oppressors. Make it as fun as possible. I think there's nothing better than a lighter attitude to get us through these things. And I know it's horrible news today, but if you really listen, you'll see that I'm not really scared right now. So, what I hope to reveal in the next little while, and we will go more into this convergence that we are all up in right now and have been for a while. Keep your spirit up. It will definitely help mankind towards something magnificent. Evolving, if you like, to a point where most of us can see these things for what and where they are and get out of this trap one at a time. That's all it takes. You don't have to help anyone out. They will see you. Having a light attitude in combination with this knowledge is an absolute weapon. And we have this against our oppressors, and I am totally convinced of that. I realize I don't soft sell you. You'll find so many others that are better at the whole love and light thing. Mommy's a little bit tough love sometimes. But I'm convinced that I will get through this. And I am not special. A little bit special. I got special needs. Oh my God, I forgot to tell you. Listener supported. I know I forgot. I always forget. And we love and appreciate your help. Everybody. And saying hello to Awake Radio and Revolution Radio Studio A and Will Spirit Radio. Hey guys. And of course, TurtleIslandNews.info. And I know Mommy can sure use a cocktail right now because my God, right? So anyway, I think we can fight this alien invader force. And I absolutely think that I can't see the sky because there's a freaking ship out there. Prove to me there's not a ship out there. There's some things that are not human that happen suddenly on this planet. Yes, the celestial convergence brings some things. And we're probably surrounded by those creepy things right now. Now, I've always had this inner conviction that gaining knowledge together with being of high spirit are the two main traits that we need to use and actually develop here with this. Because you can die from stress. And we're seeing that because around us people are losing their darn minds. And the parasites, for lack of calling them aliens, you could believe they're just a bunch of cross-dressing pedophiles if you like, but I'm thinking more reptilian-y, gray, skinny, creepy, nasty thingy. Anyway, have always considered us fairly unpredictable, which is why they've gone to so much efforts to poison our water, our food, our air, our brothers and sisters. And I think this has been their great dilemma. They never seem to know where we're at. We have a tendency to change direction at any time, in any second, to something completely and totally and utterly unpredictable. This is and will be our greatest strength, our lifesaver. For example, I seriously doubt that the great Lord EA, or Cain, or whatever you want to call him, God, good, yeah, whatever, and his cohorts of minions had expected that this information would come out now when they're so poised. And I don't think they thought that the knowledge he had given to his own private elite over the millennia would be understood by a larger and larger group of Lulus. That's what they call us. But it has, and it's too late, because the cat is out of the bag. When you hear me talk about these things, and take a re-listen if you get a chance, even after here where we are, quite some time since the Fukushima disaster, the fact still remains. It is one part of a great deal of catastrophes that we're having in this modern time. It is a slew of catastrophes. It is the catastrophocalypse. Because they knew the Hanford plant was going to be a frickin' problem in the 50s. So none of this stuff is new news. It's old news. It still sucks. Like a great big sucking thing. But not in a good, fun way like we like it. And because it killed a lot of people when it happened, but because of the long-term effects that it has on our mother, Earth, and her population, her children, this is an ongoing crime towards the mother, and in a very long time. Because, all of the oil spills are way friggin' up there. The radiation that is leaking out, seething right now, from all over the world is massive. It's already hit the west coast, Turtle Island, full blast still. Long after this disaster happened, it will continue to do so for a very long time. There is no doubt whatsoever that this was a planned event. Yeah, I'm saying it, calling it. Perhaps it went a little bit overboard. Maybe it didn't. Either way, planned. Earthquake first. Just like those fires. Just like this. Looks like a nuclear bomb. It could be a nuclear bomb in China. Not saying it isn't, but earthquake first. Far away. underneath lifted up the ground. Then a beam of light came down and radiation. Okay, normally doesn't kill immediately unless you're in the direct vicinity of it. Catastrophic area. But the cancer rate will increase exponentially from now till forever. Radiation will mutate further generations as we are already mutated. And I'm sure this will benefit somehow the alien hybrid cross-dressing pedophile parasites. Many of us will be in trouble. Many of us are in trouble right now. Living it, sick, coughing. Many have cancer and die fast from cancer. And it's already started. I have already talked about population control before many times. Well, it can be done in many different ways. It doesn't have to be immediate. Their plan is to depopulate over generations. So, convenient disasters like Fukushima, like the Yellow Lakes, like our northern skies, like the lack of oxygen, like Fukushima, which very few people can really see the full future effects of it, is one good way to do it. GMO food, of course, awesome way to do it. We've discussed this before, but the disaster is much worse than the authorities want to admit. The last studies showed some really friggin' depressing statistics. If you go to my page and see the amount of deaths that have happened in our sea brothers and sisters, which is why I put up, okay, the world's over, thank you for the fish to begin with. It's not funny, but it's so funny. The song is funny, not what's happening. But of course, in the usual manner, the elite owned media, which has been admitted, CIA had to admit to the Senate that they own the media, 70s, long time ago. Already happened, we know this. Now, instead of blowing it up in the pages of all the world's newspapers, we sometimes read a small article in the back of a thing here and there. Many people don't even look. Still, have to say that we at least were told about this. And although situations like this are bad, undoubtedly will reduce some of the world population, we will also find that the human genome is surprisingly friggin' strong. Very strong. And we adapt. And some people are, it actually proven, and we've talked about this before, are thriving through the radiation. Some of us are getting stronger because of it. And many bodies will adapt to this kind of radiation and survive. Build an immunity to a higher degree of radiation because, believe it or not, you can get an immunity to it. This can be both good and bad news, of course. Our bodies, if evolved enough, with a strong enough immune system, we can survive way better than we think. We are not weak. We have all kinds of genes in there that are just waiting for us to, kick on them superpowers. Super transform. Now, earlier levels of learning, we have discussed radiation in space. I have argued that our human bodies are way too weak to be able to withstand the harsh conditions of outer space. Radiation, for one thing, would kill us quickly. However, the parasites need super soldiers for space and space wars in the future. And these soldiers need to be strong enough to travel through space. As we don't use the nano travel yet, allegedly, and probably won't for quite some, apparently. At least not in the Machine Kingdom timeline, which I will get into. Probably Thursday. We further have discussed the gray alien, whom we see everywhere in science fiction novels, abduction scenarios, elsewhere. Evidence has apparently shown that this gray alien type has a great survival potential out in space, and that the U.S. military, and certainly the military of other countries too, are researching this in order to be able to use it for our super soldiers. And one of the latest official revelations from DARPA says that they have now come out with a prototype for the super soldier, and it's on display how potentially what he'll look like in 2030. However, as we knew, if the secret government agrees to release information in this area of research, they only release what they consider Stone Age. In reality, their research is way beyond this, but the information is top secret. My point is, though, that perhaps DARPA and other secret agencies are also on the side trying to make human template work for space travel, as well as what I'm from here on going to call the gray spacesuit. Plus the Kesh work, who says the 21st of this month that they are doing their first space flight. I would humbly say that our consumption of animal products would not make us likely candidates for space travel or to meet the neighbors, unless the neighbors want a snack, in which case we would be yummy. So I am not volunteering for said space flight, so you know. Anyway, this could be the reason why they have tested so many nuclear bombs in the last, 70, 80 years, and why they are now blowing up nuclear plants all over the planet, and why they were burying stuff when they knew they should not be burying stuff. Efficient as they are, they may want to kill two, maybe more birds with one stone. They know they can reduce population per the plan if they release large quantities of radiation into the atmosphere, but they will also see which body types, which genome have a tendency to survive such disasters. Unmutated, or mutated in a way that makes you stronger. Who lives, who dies? We are being tested. We are being tested physically, mentally, emotionally. We are being tested by that AI girl, Jade Helm, the one that we made up with our likes in Halo. We know that the governments of this planet are doing a lot of genetic research right now. They have been last century or so, but now they are more aggressive in this field than ever before. There's a domain called Ancestry.com where we can trace our own family bloodline. And the government, oh yes, and other groups, are very supportive of such individual research. The government seems to have a very deep desire to know which bloodline you descend from. What is your blood type? They want to know who you are. Then we must ask ourselves, why? Because Ancestry.com is just the beginning. We will see more of similar ideas in the near future. How convenient, isn't it, for the elite to let us do the job and the research for them. As we all know, nothing we do on the internet is private. Not any search, not any view, everything you do. So once we've done the research for them, all the interested parties need to do is track the people who visit these kinds of websites. And they can just read the results. The connection, most people probably don't or haven't done, is a link between Fukushima and genetic research that I just mentioned. I don't think it's too far-fetched to suggest that the government wants to keep track of the bloodlines who have the best resistance against radiation in large doses by doing tests, type Fukushima, on people. Is being done, Hartford, other places, to get an answer of whom could be qualified for space travel. And become a super soldier is a relatively easy way to separate the strong genome from the weak one. At the same time, as mentioned, they can kill off a chunk of the weak ones, useless eaters. The elite's dream must be to have a whole population that is more or less resistant to radiation. If they can achieve this, from letting some who may say, why bother? Look, once we've done this research, they have conclusions. They will know who is going to live and who is going to die. Same time, chunk will die. Lead stream, whole population, more or less resilient to radiation. The peptides from your brain can be used to give them immunity as well. Doesn't matter if they're related. Now related means nothing. Never really meant much, but there are certain strains that are stronger. So if they could achieve this by letting some die, who cares? It's possibly a dream come true. In addition, they are, of course, doing parallel research on the human genome in order to make humans adapt to certain situations. And they learn how to change and make changes as necessary. Too much? And some might say, why bother? So Ian Key and his team already know how to change and how to manipulate DNA, so why need more research? It's because the parasites want us to do most of the job, so it won't come back on them. All about our free will. We did it to ourselves, not them. The problem is that it's hard for many people to believe that our governments are this dastardly, this evil, in a bad guy, evil genius kind of evil. Unfortunately, this is nothing compared to what some people are capable of, and think about it. Why would the Japanese government build such a dangerous power plant on top of a fault line? Because yes, they did. Sooner or later, this was going to happen. With a dangerous power plant on a fault line, and for 10 years up until Fukushima, each year the reactions were stronger and stronger and stronger for earthquakes. Yes, they knew it was going to blow up. It was not a coincidence. We're talking about highly educated scientists here. Ones who are the ones who plan the setup of such dangerous plants. And it would be the height of ignorance to think that they didn't know what they were doing from the beginning. And the Americans, who made these nuclear plants that they were going to be a problem, particularly when the general plant public knows there's a problem. In addition, Japan is not the only country that has built power plants on top of or very close to fault lines. Research it if you don't believe me. It's out there, and it's frickin' ridiculous. So it's no longer as easy for the Lord Enki and his minions to manipulate us. And you can call the return of this god whatever you want. Apparently he's got a lot of different names. Probably same guy, same group of minions. There could be several of them, but Enki's just easier. We know this name. Anywho. If something comes as a hero, others look more clever, right? Still, the parasites want to continue controlling us, obviously. And some of us are having dreams, and if you are having these dreams, please go to turtleislandnews.info, left-hand side of the page, and tell me what they are saying to you. Because some of us are deprogramming quickly, slipping out of the mold, and they don't like it. But fine. They want to control us. So what if so what can they do if the old, well-tested ways don't work anymore? Then there are always ways to lead sheep back on their way to leave the fold, right? It's called technology. This is something we have in part discussed and detailed as well. Transhumanism, the machine kingdom, will capture a big part of those who are on their way to escape. But far from everyone. They never get everyone. And they know they can't get everyone. It's impossible. The more of us that they can trick, though, the better. If some of us slip through the crack, then so be it. To be able to catch some of the more evolved, spiritually if you like. However, there are those smart plans that they have considered. One of them is the harvest, and this is the year of the harvest. We will continue Thursday with more aliens. Fun, right? Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now.